Hi, welcome to MamaFuel. My name is Anne Ferguson. I am your host, and I'm thrilled to bring you this podcast that was created to fuel every mama's heart, soul, mind, and body, and hopefully spark a dream or two along the way. My mission is to change the way that we mamas treat ourselves and each other so that we feel better, live happier lives, and change the world one happier family at a time. In the MamaFuel podcast, I'm sharing real, raw, and often funny conversations with amazing mamas from around the world to remind you that you're not alone and that you're doing amazingly on this wild journey of being a gorgeous woman shepherding small humans as they make their way on our beautiful planet. You are amazing, and I cannot wait to share this conversation with you. Let's get started. When I met this week's guest, I felt like I was meeting a unicorn, not just because her hair was multiple shades, in fact, all the colors of the rainbow, but because this woman, a mother to 6 children, had launched another business while she was on maternity leave with her 6th child. And she has managed to create the life and the situation and the business that she craved and that serves her family. Jamie Swanson came from a very traditional background and has been breaking the mold in the way that she and her husband live their lives while still retaining super, super deep roots in their faith, in their families, and in their community. I'm excited for you to listen to this conversation. I'm excited for us to exchange about it over in the free Facebook group that you'll hear about later on. But if you want to go to mamafuel.me/Facebook, that's where you can join us. And I'm excited for you to hear this because Jamie has found ways to work around mama guilt, has found ways to set up her life and her family so that she can get the best of all the time she spends with her kids. And it's quite a lot. And also because they homeschool in their spare time, and also get the most out of and put the most into her business so that she's really found a way that works. I was going to say a thing that works, which isn't very eloquent. I can't wait for you to hear this. I hope it sparks conversations. I hope it sparks ideas for you. And more than anything, I hope that it encourages you to step outside the molds that have been imposed upon you in your life from your family of origin, your community, society at large, whatever it is. Listen to what Jamie and her husband have created while still building a family of 6 kids and homeschooling them and creating multiple businesses between them. The businesses aren't the point. It's putting herself, her needs, and her values first in all areas of her life. That is what makes Jamie so extraordinary and so inspiring. I hope you love this episode as much as I loved having the conversation. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. My name is Anne Ferguson, and as ever, I am your host, and I am joined this week by an extraordinary unicorn that I met in 2018 in a completely unexpected way at a massive event in a room full of 600 people. And Jamie Swanson stood out not just because of her multicolored hair that she had at the time, which I had to capture in photos and send to my daughters. Look, she's amazing. But also because we were introduced at that event to Jamie up on the stage and learned gobsmacked that she has 6 children, that she homeschools, in a business with her husband, that they run from home, and so much more. And she was one of the loveliest people that I met at that event. So we've been chatting about having you on, Jamie, onto the podcast since June 2018. And I am so grateful that you can be on the podcast with me. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so sad that we're doing it now and not like a week from now, because I'm literally going to have bright rainbows again. So right now you get stuck with northern lights, you know, so you get thank you. As I call them northern lights. It's really just a faded rainbow from October, but next week it'll be bright again.
Well, you know what? At time of recording, you have the northern lights, but by the time we publish the podcast, you will have rainbow. So if you send me a picture, I will publish with the rainbow.
I will do my best to remember.
Yeah. And if you don't, that's totally fine. Okay. So let's give everyone listening a little bit of a chance to get to know you. Tell us what your life looks like right now.
So, like you said, I am the mother of 6 lovely children, and they range from ages 13 all the way down to 2. So it is definitely, I know, it's crazy, in a usually good way and a sometimes mostly incredibly overwhelming way. It's just, my life is loud. I think if I could pick one word to say, it would be loud. And I fully support our family with our online business. And my husband and I, we actually both have online businesses. It's technically one business, but they're different. So he does pickleball stuff. I work with teaching photographers the business of personal brand photography. So how to do a steady stream of images for entrepreneurs and influencers. So a lot of my day is spent doing that. And then we are currently wrapping up our homeschooling year. We are like at the very end and just about to hop into summer vacation, which I'm really excited for because it's finally warming up, and winter was a really long winter, and my kids are all just like at the moment because they've been inside and been cooped up, and they're finally getting out and having fun. So yeah, it's a very full life, to be sure. Oh, we have a puppy too. Her name is Dora. She's a little King Charles Cavalier Spaniel. But yeah, I mean, life is crazy busy, but it's full. So I guess I'll let you dive into whichever parts you want to hear more about, but it's definitely it's not quiet, usually, right now as an exception. And it's very full.
It sounds, and it always has sounded since the day I met you, very rich, like a life that is rich in sound, in color, in contrast, in experiences, in all kinds of ways. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you. So you have 6 kids. And so 14 years ago, you erupted into this world of motherhood. Can you tell us about your early days of motherhood? It must not have been that bad because you kept going. 6 kids is that's like half a football team. That's awesome.
Yeah, if somebody would have told me that I would have 6 kids one day, I would have bet my entire life savings on it, that it wasn't going to happen because I was never one of those people who grew up playing with dolls. I was literally the kid who had the lemonade stand, who sold paper airplanes, who would do car washes. I was like the entrepreneurial, always growing up. I always had a scheme for making money. Even from kindergarten, my very first sale thing ever was gravel rocks from my driveway. Now, not pretty rocks. I'm talking the sandstone brown gravel rocks. I sold 3 of them. The first one was 3 cents from this poor lady who pitied me. And then the other 2 were 10 cents and 25 cents from my friends' dads who happened to see me.
I like the price increase on every one of your...
I just took whatever they had. I think I was charging 10 cents and one paid that. One says, I only have, the sweet little lady, I only have 3 pennies. I'm like, okay. So I've been an entrepreneur at heart and not really, I wasn't one who grew up saying I want to have a lot of kids. So when my husband and I got married almost 15 years ago now, it'll be our 15th anniversary this June. We said, maybe we'll think about kids in 3 to 5 years. And we ended up having our first 3 kids within 5 years. But it was about 9 months into our marriage, or maybe not even quite 9 months into our marriage. His sister had a baby, and her husband was about to be deployed. And she actually had the baby a little early. And he was supposed to be gone when the birth happened, and he happened to be leaving in 4 days or something. Uh-huh. And so he was there for the birth, which was such a beautiful blessing for them. But they asked if we would be godparents and come and help or come out and be at the service. And so we got there, and literally barely out of the hospital, brand new baby, trying to do baptism, and really fast because she wanted him to be there for the baptism. And I just said, how can I help, Char? You just had a baby, And she's like, can you just hold the baby and take care of him all day so I can just get stuff done? Because at this point, there's so much stuff to do that it would be easier for me to just make it happen than to try and tell you where everything is and whatever else. And so I'm like, absolutely. Because I've always loved babies. I've just never grew up yearning for them. But man, holding a brand new born baby, a whole day, getting to feed him, changing him and just being like, oh. And then all of a sudden I'm like, baby? And my husband's like, no, baby. And
yes,
really,
baby.
Yes, baby. Right. And it took a few months for him to come around to it. And a lot of it was just praying through that. And we have a strong faith that we make a lot of our decisions through. And for us, really, like we had never really thought about, we just saying 3 to 5 years is like saying, we'll think about it later. We're not ready yet. And at this point, I'm like, I want to think about it now. And so it took a few months for him to get on the same page with me. But then that's how dear little Miss Madeline came into the world. So
contestant number 1 in the Jamie Swanson baby stakes.
Contestant number 1. Yeah. And then from there, it was crazy because it was so surprising because, well, I was blessed with a very easy pregnancy, and I generally have easy pregnancies, which for those of you who don't, you have full permission to, throw your stuff at the screen or whatever. I get it. And I have friends who've gone through some incredibly difficult stuff. And so, but I also found that I loved being a mom. I loved having a baby. And my husband too, I remember this conversation thinking, man, if this is what it's like, I could have 13 kids. Yeah, I'm not going to have 13 kids. I feel pretty confident that we're done. But it was one of those moments where we're both like, man, this stuff is great. Like we love this. We love having kids. And it just surprised the crap out of me. And so then we had our next one. Britta came into the world 15 months after Madeline.
Whoa.
Lauren came 2 years later. Then we took a 4 years off. And I thought I felt like I had 2 more in me at least. And my husband was pretty convinced we were done at 3. But then I think I convinced him for 4 eventually, like when the older kids got out of diapers and we were finally, there was some normalcy. And then I thought we would be done at 4. Because he was done at 4 and he was the one but I felt like I had another boy in me. So we had a girl for number 4 and I felt like I had another boy in me and I don't know, it's just that intuition or whatever. And, but I never would have pushed that one. Like I was just happy to get my 4th, it's marriage is a dance. And, and he actually came to me and he goes, it's like, I know this is crazy, but I really feel like we're called to have another one. And I'm like, okay, like I'm ready. Let's do this. And so then we had our son, Leif. And then I thought for sure we were done. And one night, like not that much longer after we had Leif, I was so shocked, like so surprised. And my husband comes to me again. He's like, I was praying. And I feel like God is saying just one more. And I'm like, really? And I was like content.
We just had one more.
I know. They're only like 2 years apart, almost exactly. And I'm like, you're serious? And he's like, yeah, I really feel like we have another child that like we're supposed to have. And I'm like, okay, all right. Like, what's one more when you got 5?
Yeah.
One more. Actually, the big jump for one more from 5 to 6 for us was going from being able to fit in a minivan to having to buy the conversion van. That was the big jump. But that's not what goes through your head in those moments. So that's kind of how we got into having 6 kids. And both of us feel really confident. Or, at least right now, we both feel really strongly that we're done. I'm getting a little older, so there's only so many childbearing years, and I just don't feel like we'll have more at this point. But that's our journey. So
there could be more surprises around the corner, more conversations.
That's true. I don't know. I feel like we're both. I don't know. Maybe I'm open to it, obviously, but. It's surprising to me. I never would have. I remember having a very vivid conversation with my husband before we were married about how many kids we wanted to have, and I was thinking like 3 or. I think I was thinking 3 or 4 would be awesome, and he was like maybe 2, and so. He's like, I just want 1. Playing the low game. And I'm like, I want 5. He's like, we're not having 5 kids. And like, it was a heated conversation. And we're like, okay, we'll just have like 3 or 4. We'll see. We'll compromise. And then we had 6. So
to be continued.
Well, no, I don't think we'll be too. I feel a strong sense of peace that we're done. Yeah. Like there's like, I don't know if you ever feel like there are seasons in your life, but I felt like even after having Olaf, who's number 6, he couldn't nurse. Like I nursed my babies, and we still don't even know why he couldn't nurse, because he did have like, the little lip tie, and they fixed that. And I'd had a couple other babies with that where they're able to get him to nurse. And, some of my babies were a real struggle, but he latched beautifully, but he couldn't suck. And he had a few other things, nothing major, but little things that they thought might be affecting it. So I pumped for him that whole time, like for 14 months. Wow. And that was hard for me emotionally, but during that, we just really felt like the season of life had changed. And that in some ways that freed us up, because when I was pregnant, nursing, or both, which was like, I don't know, 12 years solid or something, 13 maybe, almost our whole marriage. And I really felt called to be home more with the children, even though I was getting opportunities to speak and to travel and to, just to really build my business in ways that would have been fun and that I would have loved. But we felt like for our family, it would be best at those times for me not to. And then after we had Olaf and, he couldn't nurse, we just felt like that season was done, and that we needed to start pursuing our own, like some of these, like being open to travel. We just didn't even consider it like at all. And being willing to consider some of these opportunities. And so it's just, it feels like a season has shifted, and it's definitely, now we have teenagers, which is crazy. We have one who's a 13 and one who she's 12, Britta's 12. She'll be 13 in March. And so it's like all of a sudden it's like, man, we're at the stage where we're not adding, we're almost to the stage of like not subtracting, but seeing them like, it's weird to be in all these different stages. We're still in diapers, but we still have it's fascinating. It's really interesting.
So I have so many questions, but one thing that I have often wondered when I've been musing on you, or you pop up in the community that we're both part of, and I see the amazing things that you're doing with your business, or the travel that you're participating in different meetings and gathering with amazing people who are doing amazing things like you are. And I think, how do you swing that with your 6 kids? So you were clear at one point that there was no travel, particularly because Olaf was struggling, and other reasons. I'm sure there were loads of other factors. And so you decided, okay, no, for those long 12 years, you were going to stick close to home and really build that base for your kids, which is admirable and awesome. And I can imagine at times possibly a little overwhelming. And then you started, as that season, that change started to happen. I always feel like in changes of season, there's loss and there's gain, right? And so can you talk a little bit about what that has been like for you? Because it means going away from not just one maybe sensitive child or 2 as we have in our house, but 6. That's a big constituency that you're like, people who are missing you and who want you to be there, or who are having stuff between them or amongst their friends, and you're not, like, how do you square that?
Well, part of it is that I was thinking about my oldest daughter, and I absolutely have zero regrets about making the choice to be home more. Like, it affected our business. Like, some years we were down years when we had 2 babies in a row. We saw our income decline, and we just accepted that because it was still we're still doing okay. We can do this. But but there was a lot that I gave, and it's really hard to build a business, and maybe,
yes,
anybody who's listening, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and it's a lot of consistency, which can be especially hard when you're having babies and you're taking time off. And, we had ways to, batch create in advance and automate and whatever to help us get through maternity leaves, because there wasn't anyone paying. I'm fully employed by our business. Like, it supports our entire family. There's no outside income coming in. And so it can be like, it was a good season, but it was a really hard season. And I felt like in some ways it was a real, it was a season of putting family first and getting a business off the ground in my spare moments. And there was a good deal of mom guilt, if I'm totally honest. Like I'd be trying to, and during part of this, I should share too that my husband, he went back to school to finish his degree because he didn't before we got married. And he moved away from where he was going to college to marry me and be with me. And so worked in a factory for a while and really wanted to finish his degree. So he had gone and finished his degree while I was still working in a corporate job. And during that time, we started a photography business, and he started shooting when his degree was done instead of going back to the warehouse and then taking care of the kids at home, because he wasn't making enough there to, like, it was not much more than a minimum wage job. And he didn't really feel called to take on a full-time job with his degree because of where our family was at. And like my job was I have a math background. So I was doing actuarial work, which pays really well, but it was very, and we wanted to be home more for the kids, one of us at least, or to trade off. And so there was a lot of years of sacrifice. And then when I was home more and working from home, there's always that mom guilt of I should be doing more working. Oh, but when I'm working, then I feel like I should be focusing on the kids more, or I'm using the TV as to babysit. And then when my husband was home more, we started to kind of swap traditional roles. So he was more the primary parent, the one who did meals, who did, all the house stuff. And that gave me more space in order to leave and work for a few hours and come back so that I could focus on the business. And that helped a lot. But when we got to this, like, it was so much of it felt really sacrificial, and I always felt bad about taking that time away because it just, even though that was a choice, like we didn't have to do it that way. We chose that way. We felt called to do it that way. But when that transition came, so we switched and we finally started being open to stuff. And in part, we did it because I kept thinking about my oldest daughter and would I want her to sacrifice who she was and her dreams for her family. And I'm not saying that you have to, like, I thought that if I gave my family everything, that, I don't know, like that's how I had to do it or whatever. And like, I think that if I didn't do that, I was like going to hurt the family dynamic, or that it would be unhealthy for them. Or do you know what I mean? Like I had these ideas in my mind of what needed to be. And if I wasn't doing that, then maybe I was, not serving them as well as I could or whatever. But then during this transition, one of the big things I realized is that I don't think that pursuing your dreams and really being the person that you're created to be and like living in like full alignment with your gifts and everything will detract from a family. I actually think that your kids will learn so much from seeing that, yes, you can absolutely serve your family, love your family well, but also like pursue your dreams and also be gone sometimes. And really, frankly, like I'm like, I see my kids far more. I homeschool them. I mean, I spend the first few hours of every day with them, and I'm home more than somebody working a 9 to 5 would be. And so if I'm gone a few days here and there, like, it's not as big of a deal. I mean, it's not any different than what other people are doing. And they see me pursuing dreams in a way that like, I want them to do that too. Like, I know, like, I want to model that. Like, I don't want them to give up their dreams because they have this notion that if they pursue their dreams, they're not being a good mother or a good dad. Like, and I just had to work through some crap in my own head that was there. And just say, you know what, I can do both. And it's okay for me to step away and not be there 24 hours a day and not be just mom to the kids and just a wife and leave myself for last. And so it's been really good. It's been hard. It's definitely opened up a lot of opportunities that I didn't have before, especially in terms of business growth and frankly, friends. Like it's super lonely being at home with your kids all day. Yeah. And we live in a really remote area. So almost all my friends were online. And so one of the things I joined was a mastermind. So I actually get to hang out with the same people every 4 months in person for a couple of days, talking about adult things like business and not like diapers and,
and who used
and all the stuff that comes with it. Yes. Oh, yes. Or fights, or who's cleaning what room today, or, whatever else. So I feel like I'm a better mom, and I come back so much more refreshed, being able to just be who I am outside of being a mom. Like I have more to my identity than just mom, but mom is a huge part of that, but I can do both. And I think it actually makes each one stronger by doing both, if that makes sense, instead of sacrificing for just one.
Well, I love that we're talking about this particularly today, because at time of recording, we are at the end of Maternal Mental Health Week globally. And I've been talking a lot about that in my Instagram and on my Facebook and in all the places that I have a voice, because I struggled quite a lot after my first daughter's birth, Carolina's birth, with postnatal PTSD and panic attacks and anxiety. And the anxiety has been a pretty constant companion. It ebbs and flows with stress and other factors that come into life. But I, like you, have started to realize in the last couple of years that it really doesn't serve my kids when I am solely available to them and I'm not pursuing my dreams, because what starts to happen, no matter how much you adore your kids, well, at least in my case, I can't speak for everyone, but was that resentment started to build, and a little bit of a martyr complex started kicking in, which I was very familiar with because I had seen that a little bit growing up. And I don't want to model that for my girls. I have 2 girls who are extremely sensitive and super bright, and I don't want that for them. So if I don't want that for them, as you say, like if I don't want that for them, it's like this really slow kind of Tetris falling into place of like, if I don't want that for them, then why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Right. And then you think, And my kids see, I mean, the last thing that I went away for was Camp Good Life Project with Stephanie and Jonathan Fields in the US last summer in August. And I came back from that camp wearing a pink fluffy unicorn costume in New York City and galloping in my unicorn costume in the hotel room. And the girls were like, who kidnapped our mother and brought us this fun person? And it was just from having been in this, like immersed in this really nourishing, soul-feeding camp for grownups. Like it was a love camp for grownups in the sense of like, I see you, I hear you, what are your dreams? And just having that outlet and those connections that, like you, I have a lot online because I live very far from, I'm in Switzerland and there are gorgeous people here, but a lot of the entrepreneurs that I interact with, or mamas that I interact with, are all around the world. And so to see people actually live and like hold their hands and hug them and sit beside them at dinner and go sing at a campfire and do all those things lit something in me that had been kind of dim, and going to the event that you and I were at, which was Stu McLaren's Tribe, was, wow, that was the first time really that my mind was blown so much, because there were 600 of us in that room. And at camp, I think there were 463 people, if I'm not mistaken, all like sleeping in the same camp. And it was the biggest sleepover ever. And again, being at Tribe was such a source of juice. And when I came home, like my brain was connected in different ways. And that has to be good for our kids, right? I agree with you. Like it has to, not just from a modeling perspective, but the energy that you bring into the house and the way that you interact with them and the ideas that you can encourage in them, or that you can maybe spark from conversations you're having with them. I mean, wow. No one ever suffered from having their world expanded, I don't think.
I sure hope not. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, there's something to there are ways, especially as they get older, that you can even bring them into those experiences with you. I brought my second daughter to a conference that I was at about a year and a half ago now. And we're actually thinking about bringing our oldest daughter to Tribe with us. And just starting to help them see more, because my oldest daughter is cut from the same cloth as me. She's an entrepreneur at heart. Mm-hmm. And just helping her see the kind of people we surround ourselves with and also be in that kind of community and that energy and be inspired like that, I get really excited about it. And I know that, even this coming week, we're having friends from the mastermind I joined who are from Australia stay with us. And they've got 2 little boys who are like 5 and 2. And just being around the people we meet who have those same values and who are pursuing their dreams and aren't letting conventional roles or, whatever hold them back. It's really fun. And it's neat to see my older kids starting to embrace more of those things. And like, even with homeschooling, people are like, how in the world do you do all this stuff? And with homeschooling, I think so much of our culture, regular school, regular jobs, whatever, is this idea of you put in the hours, you get the paycheck. And at least in the US, public schools tend to be, you put in the time, you pass the grades, right? Mm. It's so much less interest-based. And like, if you finish early, there's no reward. You have to sit bored. Like, we've done public school last year because I had baby number 6 and I just didn't have it in me to homeschool, and I'm going to do it well if I'm going to do it. And then probably about 6 years ago now, we did a partial year in public school for a similar reason. It was just a really crazy busy time with the business. We were moving to a different state, and in order to do everything, something had to give. And so we did public school for that. And it's just, my son just got so, he was just so bored all the time in school. Like, he was so far ahead, and he'd finish it. And so when I homeschool, and same thing goes with business, I'm always thinking about, instead of teaching them, it's just about putting in the time. Like, we don't have amounts of time that you have to do. Mm-hmm. I say, here's your assignment for the week. Here's what we need to do. Let me help teach you. Like, with my kindergartner, I have to work with her every day because she can't read yet. She doesn't know how to do math yet. She needs more help. Yeah. But for my older kids that can read really well, I give them their assignments, I give them their guidance. And then if they have it done on Thursday night, they can go to a kids' night and they don't have to go to school on Friday. And not that they go to school, but they don't have to do school. Yeah. And once they're done with their assignments for the day, they can be done, whether they sit down and do them fast. And when they're focused, they can do them in an hour or 2. Or if they procrastinate and they're there for 6 hours, that's up to them. And so I've really tried to get away from teaching them, you just put in the hours kind of mentality. But if you get it done, if you know what you need to do and you focus, you can be done earlier. Like, my 13-year-old daughter said, she loves math. She finished her year of math in February. She worked like a crazy. I had to tell her to put her math book away and go to bed because she had that drive. She had that motivation. And it was something where she has learned that if she gets it done, she can have this free. So she's had the whole, last couple of months with she has violin that can't be done in advance, but she's literally batch worked on all of her schoolwork so that she could have more free time. And she's probably doing an hour a day max right now. She's honestly, she could be completely done at this point, in my mind, because she's just, so we make it so hard, and we think that we have to put in all this time and all this effort. But if we really focus on the stuff that's important and that what really needs to get done to move the needle in their education or in, I do a lot of interest-based learning. So a couple of my kids got really into the Hamilton musical. Yeah. And so we studied U.S. history and and then they learn it fast, super fast. When there's interest, they want to know it all. And so I really try and find those points of leverage in my day where what are the most, what moments are the most important for me to be there as a mom and to be present with them? What things do we need to focus on in school? Not just things to learn, but life skills. Yeah. And what can I teach them about being a good human being? And how can we leverage the best times? We're doing sex ed by watching The Office and talking about what things mean. You could do all sorts of different ways of doing it. And we don't do that during normal school hours because then it seems awkward in schools. Now it's just hilarious and fun. And we have open conversations that we never would have had if it was a formal, it's sometimes very uncomfortable for me. I try not to let that up, but just figuring out how to do life in a way that's not typical to make it fit what you want from it, and how to, like, it just, I don't even know where we got here from here, how we got to this and at this point, but it's just been, it's been good. And I think part of this is them seeing me go after my stuff too, and saying, okay, we can do this. And like you're talking about, they can be part of it in some way as well. So
you took us straight into the next place I wanted to go. Okay. So that's super handy. So good job. Which is, before we started recording, we were talking about how in your life, in your family setup, in your support setup, in your business setup, in your schooling setup, you have made a lot of, I'm going to air quote, big air quote, unconventional choices. And that has a cost, right? It has a cost when you choose to parent unconventionally. As I have found, it has a big social impact on your relationships with other parents or kids' relationship. Like it has a cost, right? And lots of opportunity. So can you talk to us a little bit about those decisions that you made to step off the conventional path? Because, I mean, arguably, you're a mom, you have 6 kids. There's a whole lot of weight towards a conventional setup, right? Because you had baby after baby after baby. I mean, you took some breaks, but really, like, it's a pretty condensed amount of time to build a lot of humans, which takes a lot of energy and time and work. And doing that, creating 6 whole humans, that's plenty, like, without doing all the other things. So can you talk to me a little bit about the steps off the path that you took, and what you had to sit with, and kind of the discomfort that you needed, because you'd mentioned that before, the discomfort you needed to be okay with in order to craft life in the way you guys needed and wanted it to be?
Yeah. So I think originally, since we do come from a very strong Christian background, and like, not just like Christian culture, like you hear in the news, but actually living, believing, caring about social justice, all that stuff. But there's a lot baked into that too, that isn't even like necessarily biblical, that would say, Mom, you need to be home and Dad needs to provide. And like, you have a whole nother layer of very conservative shoulds. Yes, absolutely. Should is the word. That's kind of my trigger word. And I'll explain that in a moment. But the first step where we did this was me going, so when we got married, I was doing ministry with an interdenominational ministry on college campuses, and I loved it. And my husband was working in a warehouse. But when we had our second daughter, or when we were pregnant with her, we couldn't make ends meet with my ministry salary and him being in school and childcare for 2. And so we had to make some sort of shift. He hadn't finished his degree because he chose to come marry me instead and move far away from his college. And so we just started trying to figure out, does he come into ministry with me? And we both do that, and we trade our time instead of having childcare, or, what could life look like at this point? And what we ended up doing was very unconventional for a Christian setting, in that I went back to work. I have a math degree. I became an actuary, which is a really high-paying, super dorky, boring job. But it's a very...
Somebody's got to do it.
There's more jobs than actuaries because it's really high-level statistical stuff. And so he stayed at home with the kids and finished his degree on an online program. And that, man, the comments, and they weren't always... It was usually passive comments, he'd get questions from some of his guy friends who were like, well, don't you feel like you're slacking on your role as the provider? And like all of this, like, it was really awful. I'll be honest. And not everybody, but there were definitely people who had these defined traditional roles in mind. And then I would get people who were like, well, don't you feel like you should be home with your babies to care for them? And I'm like, are you trying to tell me my husband can't care for my children too, and that I'm not ever there? Like, it was really hard. And I know any working mom who's had to be away from their children, may have this. But so the first layer was probably that we're probably on the liberal side of Christianity, if I had to place myself somewhere. And so but even, man, there's a lot of funky stuff that's believed out there as whatever. We're not going to go into that discussion too deep, but that was the first layer.
But it's real, right? Like it's
absolutely
it's a real factor. It's part of your life and the lives of a lot of people. I mean, whether they're Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu or Catholic or, I mean, whatever, Jewish, there's a lot of really heavy tradition of woman makes babies, stays home, cares for babies. Man goes out, provides, comes home, goes out, comes home, goes out. It's baked in to
it totally is.
A lot of they're very patriarchal structures. And so here you are within a community that is strongly influenced by this patriarchal structure that is encouraged I often think that a lot of these structured religions, none of which I have a particular adherence to, but I'm very religiously curious. So I'm really curious to take my kids into mosques and curious to take them into Buddhist temples and curious to take them into synagogue. Like I'm really curious for them to have a full understanding, and I'd love to take them to a Baptist church, and I'd love to do all of those things, right? And will. But I see that a lot of those structures almost, it feels like as a way of perpetuating itself, wants those traditional roles to remain. So you're within that context. So you have that, like, you're like, no, I don't agree.
No, I do. It wasn't everybody. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's not every place. And so it's hard. I think, like, I do think that there definitely are constructs within Christianity. I haven't studied. I mean, I have studied at a basic level some of the others, but I've read the Bible for years and years and years in depth. And I think there's a lot of cultural stuff that's brought into it that isn't in the Bible itself. Does that make sense?
Yes. Probably all religious text, I would think.
Well, and there's so many things. You can take anything out of context, you know, like anything, anywhere. You could probably even find things in this conversation that we're having right here you could pull a little snippet out and take it out of context and make it sound like something it's absolutely not. And it's hard because there are different ways to interpret everything. But like for us, we really feel that we can have a personal relationship with God, and that we get this Holy Spirit that will guide us and direct us in the ways that we should go. And so we felt strongly called for this to be what we were doing. And so it wasn't just like, I want to do this. This makes the most sense. Like, this felt like a strong calling on our hearts for both of us. And so and I believe a lot of it had to do, like, my husband, I think a big part of his confidence was that he needed to finish his degree, not to work in it, because he hasn't done a single thing that has to do with it, but to know that he could. Mm-hmm. And that's in part because of his history and background. But, and it just, we had total peace about it, but there are, and it wasn't even just Christian constructs, but that was definitely part of it. Cause we were part of a little bit more conservative church, but we're definitely, like I said, more liberal side ourselves, but, doesn't matter. But it was also a lot from our families, and my family they don't have any sort of faith at all. And so, but they grew up on farms where there was women's work and men's work. Like, those are terms I grew up with
interesting.
This is the women's work and this is the men's work. Like, you know, and the Polish women, because my dad was Polish, you know, we still have the farm that our Polish ancestors came over and had, and we have the farm that my Norwegian ancestors came over and settled on a couple miles away from each other. And so, like, we have these home farms, deep history, and like women's work. Like, I know the Polish women would work in the barn, but the Norwegian women never worked in the barn. They only worked in the house. And like, there were these super defined roles that had nothing, you know, like there's that. And then there's like the overarching Christianity roles that are maybe not so much real, but they're often lived out, and they're as well, they're perceived, and they're embedded. And I don't know if that comes from culture, if that comes from faith, whatever, but there's all these roles and these shoulds. And we genuinely feel that we were led by God to do what we were doing, and had strong peace in that 100%. And so we knew that we had peace about it, but it's still hard. Mm-hmm. And so whether somebody has a faith they follow or not, Like there are things you're going to know you need to be doing. And when you do that, there's always going to be resistance. Like I think of it as like a rubber band. And a rubber band is only useful when it's stretched, right? But when you pull it, there's a lot of resistance trying to pull it back into its comfort shape. Mm-hmm. But if you keep it stretched long enough, eventually the rubber band relaxes into that shape. And now it's expanded. And now you can stretch it more without it breaking. And you can continue this process. And so that was the first one, was just me working and him being at home with the kids and finishing his school that way. Mm-hmm. But then even just, man, we've done so much. So I'm trying to figure out the next best one to talk about. Honestly, we moved to a home that neither of us would ever have bought if we didn't, again, feel called to do this. And part of this was we wanted to have a place for people who are in ministry to come and find rest, because we know how emotionally and spiritually exhausting it can be. Because I was in ministry for 4 years, and it was just, there's no off. If somebody's having a crisis, you get the call, and so it's really hard to find real, true rest, and you don't have money at all. And so we wanted to have a place where people could come for free and not have to pay anything. And I know enough people in ministry, so it's not like something on a website. It's just word of mouth, and it books up all the time. It's great. But that was kind of our dream, and we found a place, and that story is a little too long to tell now, but it ended up not being at all what we thought it would be. We thought we'd be on a farm, we'd, maybe remodel an old farmhouse and build another house for us or something. And instead, we found this gorgeous house on a cliff overlooking Lake Superior that already had a cabin, a guest house, ready to go, and felt called to purchase that. And it's more like a luxury house. I grew up in farmhouses. We had a very modest but very fine house where we lived, and it was like the down payment for the house we bought was multiple times over the cost of our entire old house. It was just all this crazy stuff, and I had to deal. I think honestly, this all comes down to our identities and who we think we are, literally the labels we call ourselves. Because I remember when we came and we felt such a strong call to have this, not because we wanted it, but because we felt like this is where our ministry was. It was another one of those crazy Holy Spirit moments for us. And when we were doing the inspection, there's 2 whirlpool tubs in the house, and I kept and the inspector's going on about this and that and this whirlpool thing, and this is how you clean. And I literally almost had this anxiety attack right there, saying, I'm not the kind of person who owns a house with 2 whirlpool tubs. I don't do whirlpools. I'm like, what are we doing? What? And now I love my whirlpool tub. I adore it. But I'm like, what are we doing? Buying this crazy property? We could do so much more with the money, but we felt so called to have this place where people could come and find rest. But it involved me. So some of it was other people, but then it was me changing that internal dialogue with, okay, it's not that this is wrong, it's that I judge people with this stuff. It showed me where I do the same stuff that everyone else was doing, and it's unconventional. It's not what most people do. And then how we live our life. One of the things we've done in the last year is that we hired a full-time nanny and house manager. And so she lives with us. She has her own space in the low. Oh, it's amazing.
I bet.
It's kind of like having another wife.
Yes.
Because she literally, she does all the laundry. She cooks all the meals. She does all the grocery planning. She'd buy the groceries, but it's an hour and a half away because we live super remote, and I'm in town once a week, so I just pick them up while I'm there. But when something breaks, she finds somebody to come in and fix it. We've given her an envelope of signed checks so she can even write the checks when she needs to pay for them. And the mental load that I've gotten to unload, when I come home, that's why we can do this, is my husband doesn't have to bear all that weight. And he loves being a dad, but he never dreamed of being a stay-at-home dad. Mm-hmm. And it's why should we feel like one of us has to be doing this? Why should we feel like we build a team with our business? Why can't we build a team with our lives? So now, I homeschool in the mornings. I go and I work for 6-7 hours. Then I go back home. And instead of worrying about, okay, let me get the laundry done, let me do the dishes, it's clean. There's food waiting. Like, I can just be mom or a wife, and I can give my kids 100% of myself. Yeah. And I would so much so rather do that than coming home and always being like trying to, and oh my gosh, 6 kids is like having 6 blenders without lids. I mean, it's just chaos. It never ends. You know, you can clean up in an hour later and you're like, wow, you know, and so like having somebody,
were we just here 2 seconds ago?
I know. But having somebody who's managing and helping with that so that it's always at a good base at least once a day, right? But like getting over the internal, I should be the one doing this, or we should be the one doing this, was really huge for me and for my husband as well. But then also there's the comments from, well, you know, family. Again, you know, don't you feel uncomfortable with somebody else doing your laundry? You know, all
nope.
Nope. I love it.
Yeah.
But it's passive judgment. Like, it's not like, they're not really concerned about if I'm uncomfortable. They're like, yeah, and some of it wasn't so passive.
They're uncomfortable.
Yeah, they're uncomfortable with it, but there's also like judgment, and some of the comments weren't quite so passive and were much more direct about, well, why do you like, because if we can afford to do this, which our business has allowed us to have that luxury, it is seen as a luxury. Like, who are you to have something like this? And it's like, I want to be a good mom. Like, I want to be a good wife. And if I don't have to work, like, we don't realize how much that mental load and all the things that we carry in our mind that needs to get done and taken care of, like, when we can set even a chunk of that aside, it just changes everything in who you are. And it's just allowed me to be so much more of a better mother and a better wife. And it does allow me to do some more of this travel and still be back and be fully mom. Yeah. Instead of always being mom at the sink washing dishes or mom folding laundry. So
I will put a link in the show notes for everyone who's listening to a beautiful cartoon that I was talking about this week, actually, in the Facebook group and on Instagram. It's called You Should Have Asked. And it's a French cartoonist who does this amazing cartoon all about the mental load that women tend to bear more than men. And even if you have a partner, male or female, who's super involved, and even if you have another parent or two, like you have a bonus parent basically in the house, you have another adult who's there loving your kids and thinking about them, doesn't have the emotional load that you have because they're not her kids. And so she has a job and you're supporting her and her family. Like it's the ripple effect of that is awesome too. But she talks in this cartoon about that mental load and how exhausting it is. And so hallelujah for you taking the time, because the thing is, having kids doesn't mean that you're like your feet are nailed to the floor in your house. It doesn't attach you suddenly to a sink. Like at what point did our mothers who worked really hard to be able to have careers, like at one point do we owe them and anyone who came before that we not only they left the house and had careers and did their best at home, but now that's not enough. You have to be the super amazing mom and the super creating all the best experiences for your kids and not harming them by making poor decisions, which I'm sorry, we all make. And there's benefit and drawback to all the things that we do for the kids and for us, but we also have to be awesome at our jobs or awesome entrepreneurs and super sexy wives and amazing friends and traveling and come on, nobody, that's all at one time. It's not surprising that maternal mental health needs its own week. It's a real thing. So I applaud you truly. And I also know from watching you on your Instagram that you have an immense passion and an incredible talent for quilting, which is random, and you make the most extraordinary rainbow quilts. I had never seen such. In fact, I confess, I was never a quilt lover until I saw your rainbow quilt, and that changed everything. So I will find a link to your rainbow quilts, and I will put that in the show notes, because
you're sweet. Thank you.
Not only do you have 6 kids and 2 businesses and a life, but you also find time to have some creative outlet and to make some things, which brings me to my final question. We have lots of things we haven't covered, but I'm conscious of time for you. And it's this: where do you find your mama fuel in the middle of the noise and the 6 blenders with no lids on and the 2 businesses and, trying to be a happy human? How do you fuel yourself?
Yeah. So this last year has been a really big journey, probably 1.5 years now, of transformation. Like I talked about, not just going and being free to travel, but in learning how to do self-care. And I'm not just talking like pampering or whatever. And I had to figure out what that looked like for me. And what, can I share something that Stu shared with us about
Please.
priority? Now,
Yes.
this was more in a business context, but I think it's relevant to anyone, whether they own a business or not. Anybody who's a mom or a wife or a person, really, let's just be honest, humans. So the way that I used to prioritize my time was, first was like all the free content I did to build an audience in my business. Then it was giving to my clients because they paid me money and I didn't want them to ask for a refund and I wanted them to get results. And then it was to my team. So when I had people like, I didn't have a huge team at the time, but like when I had an assistant or whatever, like after I cared for all the other things, then they get me. And then when business was done, then I would give to my family and friends. And then at the end of the day, it was me. And basically, in one of our masterminds, Stu taught us the exact opposite, how he flipped it. And he said, we need to put ourselves first and not do self-care at the end of the day or with the extra hours, but give ourselves the best time and the best moments, because then we can care for our family and our friends better, which is next, the people who we are closest to. Beyond after that, because I always said, oh yeah, family over business, but realistically, business over family was what was coming out of my time. So then next it's business. And then, you know, if you're in business, so it's going to be your team would be first, then your best clients, then your free content and your non-paying clients. And it changed everything for me. That's how I structure my days. So I'm not a huge fan of mornings. And so my husband does the morning. Like I don't mind. I actually love mornings, but I don't love being mom right away in the morning. Yeah. That is a struggle for me. And I'm not an early morning riser by nature. I can do it. I can get used to it, but it takes me a few hours to really feel alert. And so I take the morning. My husband does mornings with the kids. And basically my time before 8 a.m. is mine, where I have a quiet time in my bed. He brings me coffee and sometimes breakfast in bed because he's the best husband in the world.
Oh my
God. I adore him. I know, he's the sweetest. Coffee every day, occasionally breakfast, depending on how crazy the day is.
Wow.
And then sometimes I just pray, sometimes I read, sometimes I Instagram, sometimes I exercise or take a long bath. Doesn't matter, but that morning time, right away in the morning, is my time to really recharge myself. Then I homeschool. So family, friends, right then, homeschooling in the morning for a few hours. Then I have a team meeting. Then I deal with my clients. Then I deal with free stuff. And it changed everything for me. And then we also started making intentional space for each other because we both my husband and I were so exhausted so much of the time and kept saying, it would just be awesome to, because I saw that cartoon. That's what taught me about that mental load. It's such a brilliant thing. So I hope that your listeners and watchers actually look at it. But we started doing quarterly retreats, which is 4 days and 3 nights away. We have to leave, and we can do anything we want with them. They don't have to necessarily be spiritual based or whatever. But the goal is just to let go of the mental load for 4 days. We don't even need to call home if we don't feel like, not that we wouldn't want to, but to just not have to worry about having to do anything and to choose how we spend our time. And at first it was really hard to do without feeling guilty. But man, it has changed so much. And having that freedom to know that the other person, like my husband supports me in this and I support him in that. And it's such a wonderful thing. And yes, it's more work because we're solo parenting with 6 kids. It's crazy. But like it can totally be done. And it doesn't have to cost a lot. We often rent a cheap Airbnb somewhere and just go somewhere else. And oh man, I sleep a lot that first day. You know, it's just rest and sleep and it takes me a full day just to slow down and let go of like all the, like anything that should, has to, whatever, like all those things, I just write them down and just let them go for now. And I've learned that if there's something that is going to stress me out that really needs to be done, I should do it before I go because then I can be free of that. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I quilt. Sometimes I'll go on prayer retreats or, you know, sometimes what else have I done? I like to get massages. That's definitely usually a part of it. But we've created space for us on a regular basis. And my husband has his own time. So like we swap at 8 a.m. he takes off and I do homeschooling for a bit before the nanny takes over. And then that's his time to go. He's had his coffee, he's had his food, he's done his morning routine. Now he can go do some exercising and have space for himself before he dives into his business. And it just, making that space and making it a priority in the day has changed everything. And I thought I would never be able to find the time. But when you do that and you're more rested, you're able to come from a place of higher efficiency. It's not about efficiency, but like, man, you get it done faster. It is. And you have such a better outlook on it. And it makes everything easier. Like, I know, you talked about anxiety. I don't deal with anxiety now in the same way that I used to, but when I was pregnant, I had, like, my third trimesters, I deal with some anxiety and depression. I get it before I have the baby. And then when the baby comes, it's like my hormones change and it just lightens. And it's not like this last baby, I had that anxiety where I understood what people meant when they said there was a weight on their chest. I never felt that before. And sometimes it'll reoccur a little bit, but having the space to just sit and breathe and remember and like pray and like not have to always be going has really helped with keeping that at bay when it does start to show up. And it's not as bad as it was, but it's a reality that I deal with every once in a while. And it's just been so transformational to learn to put myself first. It feels so selfish, but it makes everything else go better. So those are a few things that I do in a few different ways we've structured our lives, which is, again, very super non-traditional, non-conventional. But, it's if we're going to have our own business and we're going to go through all the work of running that and all the time and whatever else, why aren't we going to take advantage of the freedoms that we have with our time to do something like this? So I love it.
I love it too. I recently started, my kids are 11 and 9. And at one point this year, I said, you know what, I had a eureka moment. I bought them alarm clocks and they set them. And I just said, get up. And if you don't get up, one of them struggles. And I said to her not too long ago, you have everything that you need. You go to bed at the decent time. The alarm goes off. You can hear us all. Your door's open. So at some point, this is your responsibility. And she loves her school and she loves going there. And I said, so, you get up, you get a ride. You don't get up, it's 45 minutes on the tram and you get to go to the disciplinarian's office in the school. And I sure as heck don't want you to do that. But there comes a time when, that it just has to go that way. And the big reason that has occurred is because I just don't want to be getting their breakfast and answering, getting involved with squabbles. So now I don't go downstairs. I go downstairs at the time when it's time to leave.
That's brilliant.
And it's a little thing, and it's not, I don't have the structure of the movement and the writing and all that. So far I don't, because I share the bathroom with my husband and we're he's got his own rhythm and it kind of just doesn't, I'm not quite at the point where I'm saying I'm out completely because he's often not here. So I'm kind of available, but when he's not here, I'm even less involved. They just do it. Whereas when he's here, they kind of know that they can, draw daddy into it all. But yeah, it really does make a difference to just, until 7:20, from 6 o'clock to 7:20, I'm just having my own shower and doing my own hair and, just stuff for me.
Having space.
Yeah, it's really important.
Awesome.
Jamie, I am so grateful to you for the time today. There are so many other things I could have asked you about, and I'm sure my listeners will be like, I would have liked to have known about this. I will put all of the links to where people can find you in the show notes, because I bet I'm not the only one who'll be blown away by your rainbow quilts and by the amazing support that you give to photographers. So I'll make sure that I get all that information from you after. But thank you, and keep doing what you're doing, because you're so it's just inspiring to see how you've structured your family and your lives and how it's helped you become happier and more fulfilled people, and therefore increased your success and your family's joy. It's just awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Wasn't that cool? I love how Jamie and her husband have set up their family and their work life in a way that works for them. And I honor the time that they make sure that they spend alone. away from all of the people and all of the demands of their time, including their business, to pursue their creative endeavors, to pursue their passions, and just to take time to reflect. I hope that it's inspired you to maybe take some time of your own, and it doesn't have to be a quarterly retreat or a monthly retreat. It can just be an hour or 2 hours, but really practicing self-love where you put yourself first above all else regularly starts to create a bond of trust between you and yourself. Your body, your soul, your heart, your mind know that you put yourself first. And that, my beauty, changes everything. I'd love to know what you thought of this episode. So make sure that you come into the Facebook group and let me know what you think. I'll give you a link to that in 1 second. Bye for now. That's it for this episode of MamaFuel the podcast. Thanks for listening. There's a lot more conversation, sharing, and real mama talk happening in our private Facebook group. To join the virtual village, go to www.mamafuel.me/Facebook. That's MAMAFUEL.me/Facebook. And be sure to say hi when you get there. If you like this episode, or if you know a mama who could use a little mama fuel, and let's face it, we all have times when we're running on fumes, I'd love you to share this episode and to rate it and leave a review. The algorithms work that way. The more reviews there are and the more sharing there is, the more mamas will be able to feel encouraged and supported with the conversations that you just listened to in MamaFuel. Every comment helps, and it's always a super delight to hear from you. Thanks, and bye for now.